Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to call to order this special meeting of the City Council, which is a joint meeting with some of our commissions. So, City Clerk, would you like to call our names?
Councilmember Daley.
Here.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Here.
Vice Mayor Lang.
Here.
Mayor Meadows.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So tonight we're going to be talking with, I think, 4 of our commissions. And the first commission up is Senior Commission, and actually, you get me. So our commissioners were we're a little light tonight, so rather than subject just one of them to us, it seemed that I could represent the commission. Just briefly, I know you've all seen their work plan, and the commission is doing, again this year, what they did last year, which includes this time spring fling instead of fall fling, which is a collaboration with the Club 55 in the community center. That will be in May, I think May 15th, but don't hold me to that date. We'll get the information. And also doing another community health fair. That was very well done last year and very popular. And then the commission will focus on outreach and trying to get isolated seniors involved and make sure we can get some services such as emergency preparedness to them. So that is the crux of the work plan, and actually their staff liaison is here. Do you want me to say anything else, or was that? All right, so, and Ms. Chu does a great job of leading the commission and ably assisted by other members of Parks and Rec. So do my colleagues have any questions for me representing Senior Commission? Yes.
I'm curious about the last thing that you mentioned. What are they doing to first identify isolated seniors? And then once identified, what are they actually doing to reach out to them?
Yeah, so that's a little tricky because, as you all know, people who are communicated to have to actually opt in to be communicated to. And so there's potential for a collaboration with Resilient Los Altos, who also wants to try to identify people with functional needs that would make it difficult for them in an emergency to get out. And so there might be some collaboration on that. So really, it's focused on emergency preparedness as sort of the way to try to see if we can reach more people than the social ones who come to our events are not the ones that are going to need the help in case of an emergency. And there's some other programs to speak specifically about emergency preparedness after the adult 50-plus luncheons, which are held on a regular basis, and also to maybe increase participation in adult 50-plus through various offerings and stuff. It is a hard thing to do, but I think if we try to make a concerted effort, we might be able to get more people on the radar who we know need some help and services. Yes.
Sort of a follow-on to that, when I was out campaigning, I'm sure many of you noticed a similar thing, which is ring the doorbell and there'd be a person, a caregiver who was there. And it would be perhaps helpful if we could figure out some way to communicate regularly with those caregivers as well, because they'll probably be in touch with some of the people who are less likely to be reached otherwise. And it would also just be great if they knew that we knew that they were there and we valued them as other members of our community.
Yes, actually. And would you like to, come on up, because like a caregiver registration list, or not registration, but go ahead, Jamie.
Jamie Chu, Deputy Director for Parks and Recreation. I will just highlight we're actually in the works. We're going to be partnering with Avenidas to hold the 2026 Caregiving Conference at the Community Center. So that is another avenue that we can use to outreach. 2 other elements that the Commission talked about. Commissioner Dolores Gallagher Thompson is the representative on SourceWise, so that is another element that can be used to outreach. In addition to, I think, Chair Olson also talked about maybe potentially collaborating with Meals on Wheels through CSA. So those were two other elements that the commission had talked about.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a couple of quick suggestions for outreach. At this point, almost every senior in the community gets their prescriptions filled at the Walgreens downtown, since the Rite Aid over at Foothill Crossing is closed, and I think there's another Rite Aid just over the border in Mountain View that's closing. I'd love to see us, set up a table out in front of Rite Aid and just have volunteers share information. Likewise, Farmers Market. And then likewise, our service clubs in town. And Mayor, you and I have talked about the role that Rotary, for example, could play in working with RLA, but it also applies here with the Senior Commission. So just wanted to mention those things as ways to spread our reach.
All right, great. We'll take that back to the commission, and I know they're doing a good job. I thought the health fair in particular was well attended, and the Club 55 Spring Fling. Well, Club 55 is always well attended, and it was particularly well attended Halloween last time. So, thanks to the senior commissioners. All right. So next, Complete Streets Commission. Good evening. So I'm going to have each of you briefly introduce yourselves, and I think you know us because we have name tags. So,
Okay. Good evening. I'm Clara Roa, and I am a commissioner for the first year since November. Since September.
Hello, I'm Scott Pieka, current acting chair, and it's my third year on the Complete Streets.
Wes Helmholtz, Vice Chair. Evening, everybody, and been here for 3 years as well on the commission.
Tony Lee.
all right. So would you guys like to take us through your work plan? I won't try to represent it, I promise.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. And also, before we begin, I'd like to thank the staff who we work with, Stephen Sun and Art Williams, for their very healthy and proactive working relationship with us and meeting planning, getting aligned, set up, and making sure that community comments and feedback are shared with us on a regular basis. Since we're looking at, or we were shared 3 years of work plans, we'll give a quick kind of summary of those goals as I go through them, and then focus on mostly 2026 and what we want to accomplish. So for 2024, if you're looking at those goals, metrics, they were set before I joined the commission. They're pretty metric focused, looking into the year 2030 and beyond with percent growth over time. And while that is a wonderful way to set a goal, ultimately hard to track. Hard for us to monitor and track, percent of pedestrians increased in the city and so forth. So with those goals, they were focused on activities in the city, safety, community input, and evaluation. Moving into 2025, the goals shifted a little bit to more soft goals or project-based. And our goals were covered in 5 areas for covering safe routes to school, downtown safety improvements, multimodal transportation, road maintenance, and complete streets master plan activities. So as we worked in last year, I think we had a pretty successful year. While you always want to accomplish more than I think as time allows or alignment allows or something else becomes more important. One of the big things that we began working on with Stephen Sun is looking at how we overlay the Safe Routes to School plan, Complete Streets Master Plan, focused with the resurfacing, remodeling, and overlay of our city streets. We were presented with kind of a 3-year plan for how we were evaluating and looking at certain streets in Los Altos, looking at the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index scoring, and then ultimately kind of rating and looking at those together with city staff on what is important, and then areas of greatest impact. We had the opportunity of looking at the architectural diagrams and kind of breaking down street by street to make sure that the intersection geometries had community input in addition to the engineering plans. And we did that for several sessions, very iterative, and I think ultimately came out with a very, the best impact possible. And then, as you can probably see around the city, what happened anyways, but the city streets being improved with new striping, new bike lanes, and so forth. Does anyone else want to share any highlights or their favorite things from 2025?
We've had a really good opportunity to just get to know the streets of Los Altos better, and what all these neighborhoods around the schools, and how people get to and from everywhere they're going in Los Altos. And it's a great way to sort of even just understand the community, understand where there's safety concerns, how we can make things better, and just looking forward to more of that in 2026. So appreciate the opportunity.
So for 2026, we've carried on from the work that we didn't accomplish or wanted to do more of from 2025, and then ultimately did a whiteboarding session within the commission to figure out how do we pick up things that we care about, that we're passionate about, and we want to work on, not just for the impact of the city itself, but ultimately things that we think will move the needle for the Complete Streets Master Plan. We have 4 current goals right now with 9 projects that we want to work on. Some of them are impeded just by timelines that we've learned about recently, but the 4 main goals are the Complete Streets Master Plan Stewardship. It's been around for 5 years now. There's a lot of great information in there. Wesley's done a great job of kind of calling out some of the themes and things we've seen over time. Last year, Commissioner Lee did a personal project or a kind of a passion project, I would say, going around to the various local schools and looking at the list of activities that were stated out in the plan and ultimately determining, did we or have we accomplished these? And if not, what do we need to do next? So he gave us a report. It was very helpful and gave us kind of a breakdown of those metrics. And the other piece was we plan to work on is improving pedestrian and multimodal paths. At this time, they're called out in the Complete Streets Master Plan, are ways for us to improve the wayfinder maps, which ultimately helps us with safe routes to school, and ultimately calling out, like, as we're biking around the city, where are the best ways and the best paths for us to take. Currently, that's not done, so we've called out to develop and implement wayfinder maps in 1 to 2 locations. So we're kind of shrinking the change and looking at areas where we can focus, where we've heard a lot of feedback from citizens, both through emails and also through public comment. Areas, for example, would be Distal Drive over off of El Camino, and also at the Egan and Bullis schools over off of Portola and San Antonio. Of course, there's other areas in Los Altos to focus on just besides the North District, but those are 2 areas that we are very aware of and that get brought up repeatedly. And other areas for us to focus on for pedestrian and multimodals is downtown accessibility, looking at bike racks, walking improvements, and other ways for us to partner with local community groups. And with that, there's the bike, walk, and wheel safety programming. There's a lot of different organizations in the city that do programs through the month of May, but also recently Wes just did a walker wheel program with his local middle school, or his children's middle school.
Covington, yeah.
It's flagged in one of the newsletters. And so ultimately finding ways that we can, scale our efforts or work with community groups to make that happen. And then lastly, in that area is, it took us a while to get to the formation of this project, but it's stated as create a report regarding the current conditions of road shoulders and parkways. Some, big area of our city that could use attention is that, only 10% of our city streets, as I understand it, have sidewalks. There's a lot of, soft shoulders that make it easier or difficult to walk on our city streets. We're a city of dark sky ordinance, and we choose to have very little sidewalks intentionally. So how do we look at our city in totality to find ways where people can walk safely to school with their families, dogs, and so forth, and not try to solve the problem, but ultimately create a report like here's the baseline for what we need to think about and how from city policy standpoint might support us, or ultimately something that we need to do from an engineering perspective. And the other 2 goals, one is address public safety locations and concerns. So we're calling out here, identify the top 5 locations for using the speed survey results to leverage areas for traffic calming measures. So it's something that you, I understand, will be voting on in the future, whether or not we do a citywide survey for citywide speed radar survey. And then from those results, we can analyze them and determine where areas we can focus on. And then the last one is manage capital improvement projects. There's, as we review the annual plan with Stevenson on where we want to resurface and remill our streets with safe routes to school, it gives us an opportunity to take public input and figure out where we can ultimately address our work and do better. And then lastly, the kind of a future-looking one is road impact planning for new developments. I think specifically in areas in North Los Altos near the economic corridor, right, where we're building high-density housing. While we don't know the impact yet to our city streets, we're hearing it from the residents that parking is an issue or a challenge currently with construction cars. It's creating unsafe conditions for kids biking to school. And then there's parking challenges that will come as a result of that. So as we begin to plan for the future and become, more dense city in some areas while not in others, we need to think about, from commission perspective, how do we think about that or make a recommendation to the council for things to consider? Those are the 2026 objectives and goals for us. Anyone else want to add any input or thoughts on that?
Might just really quickly say, we know that there's a couple things that might come to council's attention or priority this year, and we look forward to, if we can help in any of that or assist or facilitate anything, even bringing community input to commission meetings or whatever the case may be, we'd love to be part of that. I know folks are looking at downtown, some things downtown safety-wise, and anything else that's sort of high priority for the council, we definitely take direction on that. So thanks.
I'm going to turn to the Vice Mayor because you're the liaison, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, thank you. I think it's great work. I've been monitoring the meetings and so forth, and particularly appreciate the sort of urge to go out there and see what's actually happening. It's in this commission in particular, I think, important. Enjoyed hearing about your magical mystery tour around to all the schools and so forth, and learning about that. One thing I just wanted to raise is, particularly along that corridor, particularly when we're thinking about high school students, it always seems like being in touch with Mountain View would be helpful. How do you feel about that? Is this something we could help facilitate? Does that make sense? So,
I would say yes and yes. We were made aware from a citizen that the BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Action Committee of Mountain View, was doing a
Community walk and ride.
Yeah, community walk and ride. It was two Fridays ago where they went out and ultimately walked Rengsdorf from El Camino down the street to determine how they re-envision the street for bicycle safety. I filled out a survey, asking them to contact Complete Streets Commission as we care about that corridor, which ultimately connects Rengsdorf across El Camino up Distal and bringing children into our school districts, either it's Egan Bullis or Los Altos High. So that request was made. We've talked about it pretty heavily, and we've actually given feedback to several residents that are concerned about it. Like, how do we not just solve the challenge of bicycle safety, people riding their bikes on sidewalks, but look at the entire system of creating what I've talked to you about, which is called the Wiggle. They have it in San Francisco, but ultimately creating a connected bike path that's very clear on how people should ride through multi-streets. So solving it more systematically than just a single point.
good, thank you.
Yeah.
Do my colleagues have any? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners. I was a liaison for this commission my first 2 years on the council, and I was struck by how technical it was. I didn't realize that until I got on it, and I wonder if maybe you also, when you got appointed, didn't realize really how technical a commission this is. But it takes a lot of work, I think, to really get up to speed to understand the technical issues. And I remember being really amazed at how much effort went into being a commissioner on this commission. So thank you for doing this. I like your work plan. I appreciate the presentation that you've done today. I think there are two projects, the CIP projects, that are liable to fall on your desk this year, and I just kind of want to prime you for them.
Please.
One of them is the possibility of having a one-way loop downtown. This is something that's been talked about for some time. I think that we're ready to start exploring it more seriously now. And I know I've no doubt that staff is going to be focusing on the traffic the automobile traffic and the parking implications. I'm also very interested on what the implications to other modes of transport, to cyclists, pedestrians. How is a downtown loop going to work? How can we make it most efficient and safe for cars, for cyclists and pedestrians and anyone else that I might be leaving out? So I'm very interested in hearing your opinions on that. That's going to matter a lot to me. The other big project, which is probably a little bit further down the road, is going to be a redesign of San Antonio. The idea being to make it bicycle safe from El Camino all the way up to Foothill. I think it's going to be a very challenging project. I think it's going to be more challenging than what the city originally realized when we first applied for the grant. It's not going to look the same as El Camino. It's going to have to be a little bit different, but make sure that there is room on your work plan for that, because your input is going to matter a lot. In particular, I'm wondering what the best way is to get cyclists from El Camino to Foothill. The interchange between San Antonio and El Camino itself, I think, is extremely dangerous for cyclists, especially going up toward Foothill. Maybe there are other ways of working around. I don't know, but I'm really interested in hearing your input on that project as well.
Thank you. For a quick comment on that, I didn't talk about it, but it is listed on our work plan. In recent conversations with Stephen, the city traffic engineer, he shared with us kind of his efforts and what he has planned for the year. And so we're aware that that's on there, but most of the real work won't begin until 2027, but there are things that we can begin to do this year, I think, with community input and feedback. As a thought, several of us have, or Wes and I have just discussed it, ways to create a model for gaining community feedback in a structured way, not just for our commission, but for other commissions. I'm seeing this, in my, 3 years on this commission, or with like the city park, for instance, recently. And it's not in the commission handbook, but it would be nice to have perhaps a guidance or a framework for how we do this in our city. And oftentimes, city staff can take a design vision and bring it to us for feedback and input, which is one way of doing it. And then there's an iterative cycle. And another way, which I've seen a few times recently from a Mountain View's perspective, is they show a project timeline, which is community input first, doing, they do a walking survey, they do online surveys, they gather it, and then that's taken as a part of the planning steps. And then those planning steps are then done by city staff and then ultimately cycle back for community input. So because there's no framework, is oftentimes, the chicken or the egg on how, like, oh, we have these thoughts and what's the best way to achieve. And maybe there's argument for both sides, but something I guess I look or like hoping we can have guidance on how to best proceed with that, because San Antonio is going to be a challenging project, and proceeding forward with like a rubric for that is, I think, something to talk more about.
I think the best way to do that is go to the Complete Streets Master Plan that really sets out the overarching policies. With respect to the details, I don't want to put my thumb on the scale. I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say and what the community has to say. Mm-hmm. The one caution that I will give you is we've already heard, when it comes to redesigning San Antonio, some opposition to the idea itself. It's a bit controversial. Haven't heard that yet with the idea of the downtown loop, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do. If the council has decided that it wants to move forward with exploring those projects as if they're going to happen, we would want input from you, and for you to get input from the community really on how to make that most successful, make it as safe as possible, make it as best for the community as possible. There are some who may want you to make a recommendation to council not to do the projects at all. But if the council's direction has been, we're doing it, or we want you to give us the information so we can make the decision, just people can come to you and say, don't do it, tell the council not to do it. But if council has asked you, give us the information, go and synthesize the opposition to a project, but bear in mind that what the best advice that you can give us is advice on how to make it the best possible if we go forward with it.
That's clear. Thank you.
All right. In the interest of time, then, I will just say that I enjoyed 2024 when I was liaison and learned a lot. And one of the things that you can do and I think you're already doing it, is going around looking at the streets, but look at the, not just the before, but the after. Because I know you hear about the before, and obviously in some cases like Jordan, we heard about the after, but I'm getting interesting reactions to some of the safe routes traffic patterning, which is new for our community. So, check them out and, keep us informed because I mean, I'm hearing actually more than I expected to. So anyway, thanks for the good work. I appreciate it. Any last comments? Okay. Thank you so much. Keep up the excellent work.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Historical Commission. All right, so we'll, as you get settled, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to introduce yourselves to us, and again, you know who we are because of the name tag. So,
Karen Skusel.
the green. It turns green when the microphone. There you go.
Thank you. I'm Gina Atkinson, and this is my second year on the Historical Commission.
Suzanne McGuire-Negus, second year on the commission.
Liza Coe, I've lost count. It must be my fourth year because my term is up in September. So,
You're eligible for another term.
I've heard.
Not to plant any leading suggestions, but just keep that in mind. So I'm going to have you guys do the same thing. And which of you is chair now? Gina, okay. And you want to take us through, last year, what your work plan is you're proposing, and you're welcome to sprinkle your feelings about how this past year has been for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'd like to thank the council members, too, for having us here. It's great to have this chance to sort of brainstorm together. We appreciate that opportunity. And I'd also like to thank our staff liaison, Sean Gallegos, who has just been stalwart in helping us go forward with everything we've been trying to do. So we appreciate him very much. So I'm going to focus on the 2026 work plan. I assume you all have that, I think. The first item here is the Margaret Thompson Essay Contest, which I know you're all at least somewhat familiar with. Commissioner McGuire-Negus is going to take on helping out at the Ice Cream Social for that this year. And she and I are both working on scoring some of the essays. Next week we have a date. I'm told there are sometimes 350 to 400 essays submitted. So we're part of a team that's going to take one afternoon next week and work on the scoring. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. The Ice Cream Social this year is on May 12th, right before a city council meeting. As you all know, there's some direct involvement there. So that's the first thing. The second one is the Historic Plaque Program, which Commissioner Skusel has very kindly volunteered to check in with some of our Mills Act and other historic home property owners about who doesn't have a plaque but would like to have one, which certainly seems like a valuable endeavor. Our third thing is rehabilitation of the apricot orchard. And we understand this is a little bit of a hotbed issue at the moment. So on the Historical Commission, we don't really have too much of a direct plan going forward. We're kind of waiting to see how things fall out. Since the History Museum is also involved, we heard a proposal at one point that the Parks, Arts, Recreation and Cultural Commission might get involved with the orchard. So we don't really know, what the bounds are of our involvement are here. But we're all certainly very interested in the orchard and would like to help out in any way we can to preserve it. There has been a proposal that there might be an apricot fair at some point, which I don't think there's been the STEM apricot fair, but there hasn't been one focusing on the orchard. So if it's decided that that's a good idea, I know that I and probably the other commissioners would be interested in working to make that happen. And as we know from the museum's announcement about a week ago, there is a new orchardist in charge of the orchard. We're looking forward to possibly having more contact with her and hearing more about her plans. I understand she's extremely qualified and very motivated to work on this. So that's that. The next one is the historic preservation entitlements, which I believe we as commissioners are kind of relying on staff to get us going with. We don't really have any specific goals for that at the moment. Next, we have the Historic Preservation Award, and that again is something that we commissioners rely on staff to kind of get us going with. I understand possibly at the next Historical Commission meeting scheduled for April, or possibly at the one after that, we may have information about nominees for 2026 for the Historic Preservation Award. 2025, it went to Walter Chapman, the outstanding architectural designer, and we as a commission, I think, were very impressed with his qualifications. And there were also some other really good candidates that we all appreciated the chance to hear from at that meeting. So I'm assuming there will be more than one nominee again for 2026. And then next we have the Certified Local Government Report, and again, we're relying on staff to get that going, although I believe we all will need to contribute specific data to that. At some point, we'll be asked to contribute things, which of course we will be happy to do. And then next we have foster partnership with Los Altos History Museum. So I have heard, and this predates my joining the commission, that in the past there have been pizza parties in the summer between the museum and the Historical Commission, but they haven't happened in the last few years for whatever reason. So I volunteered, if there's a decision to continue some kind of either a more formal meeting or a social occasion between the museum and the Historical Commission, I would be happy to try to arrange that and work with that. I think that would be a really helpful thing. Actually, 3 of the 4 of us here tonight are also volunteers at the History Museum, so we're all pretty well connected there with things going on, and we like the kind of nexus between that group and the Historical Commission, so we hope there's going to be more of that interface. So yeah, I think that's, advocate for good stewardship of city-owned historic properties. Well, that's pretty much, we are guided by staff in terms of when a particular proposal comes up by a member of the community or something about a historically designated property or home. We get involved, and we always carefully review what staff has provided for us, their reports and so forth. So again, that's not something that we feel we do from the ground up, but we're happy to be involved as the need arises and we're asked for our input. So do my fellow commissioners have anything else to add?
I think you referred to it earlier, but I think the big unknown is the apricot orchard and our understanding of our role, considering that we now have a new orchardist. Dr. Packard's group has been disbanded or is in the process thereof. And, in past, we've been asked to adjudicate whether a tree should be cut down or not. Will that continue to be something that we're asked to do? Or, so I think we're just very unclear on what that's going to look like. And would appreciate any input.
Okay, we're gonna, do you want to go, last year, okay, and then we'll go to the vice mayor who's this year's liaison, if that's okay.
First, thanks for a tough year, right? I have questions about the history orchard being on the work plan at all. I honestly don't think it should be on your work plan. I don't think there's anything that you can do about it, right? We've got an orchardist. We've got a plan in place. The museum is tasked with managing it. And I think that, it could be something that you incorporate into outreach and into education because it's a historic asset. But I don't think that I think you should strike it from your work plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to your liaison for this year.
Yeah, I'd concur with that. I think that we've turned a corner with that. I think there was a time where, we in fact lost the orchardist for a while, and Dr. Packard was great about stepping in and really rallying and so forth. But unprompted by me recently, a resident without much interest in the orchard really said to me, it looks better than it ever has. And I think it's come a long way. And I do think that the right way to manage it day in, day out is with a professional orchardist, and we have a sequence of contracts to make that happen. If you do think about it, I'd say it's time to turn the corner and think more about it in terms of how to celebrate and use the asset, right? The STEM fair, I think, if that comes back with the museum or organizing that was a good way of encouraging people to engage with it, which I think is wonderful. Thank you for the good work. I would just, there's all sorts of stuff. I love talking about this stuff, so I'm going to refrain. But what I'd say in particular is echoing a comment that Councilmember Weinberg said earlier about the Planning Commission, it being fairly technical work. I think the work of this commission is more technical than people expect, especially when you're looking at cases involving particular properties. I won't put you on the spot because that kind of thing, but I would certainly urge each of you to take responsibility for making sure you're getting the training you need to be up to that technical challenge, particularly familiarity with the way the state runs things and refers to the Department of Interior standards and so forth. A good working familiarity with that, it will be very helpful for that work. And thank you in advance for the time invested in the education. To be clear, if it's good education that helps with the commission, the city will help support that or will support that, right? So just if you can make the time, we can make it happen. And please think about that. Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you for bringing up training, Councilmember Lang. That was one thing I forgot to say, that staff has been really helpful in providing us with links to different things that we can engage in terms of training. And I think, I know that I and probably the rest of us are all planning to do one focusing on just what you said, Councilmember Lang, which is it's a seminar put on by the California Office of Historic Preservation in 3 parts. And its full title is Interpretation and Application of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for the Treatment of Historic Properties. So I think for me, that will be very helpful. I did do 2 other training seminars last year, but they were more specific about certain areas. And this looks like a good sort of overall thing that applies to so much of what our commission deals with. I'm also going to be doing one later this month on partners in preservation organizations and commissions, and that's sponsored by the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. So I want to assure you that we do all have training in mind, and we're very grateful again to staff for getting us connected with the places where we can do that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the work that you are all doing. I concur with Councilmember Daley and the Vice Mayor. I think that the orchard can probably come off your work plan, and you certainly have enough on your plate that you're not going to be twiddling your thumbs looking for things to do. One thing that I think has really become evident over the past year is that issues of historic value and historic property is an emotional issue. People have very strong feelings. It's not just about historic areas, but we've seen this year in particular that people have some very strong opinions about historic properties and what we do with our historic resources. I think that I've been to one of your meetings, but I see most of your meetings on video. I'm very impressed with the way that you have struggled with some of these very difficult issues. And I want to commend you for that and encourage you to continue using your best judgment. Your primary resource for processes and rules should be your training, but also the baselines that staff give you. There are some members of the public who disagree with some of the interpretations that staff and others have, and that's fine. People have different interpretations. I'm a lawyer. People go to court because they disagree over the implication of different facts and what the law is. It's okay for people to disagree, But again, we're relying on you to use your best judgment. Keep in mind that staff is there because the city manager through the city council has determined that these are the people who are best qualified to frame issues for you. And again, I don't think there's been any deviation from that. I appreciate that's the way you've been going. I want to encourage you to continue your deliberations that way because I think it really has served the city council and the city as a whole very well. Thank you.
Okay. So I also agree the Orchard has moved on, new contract, and you can enjoy it and think about how we can all take advantage of it. But completely agree with that. I just want to check with my colleagues. Did all of you either watch or attend? I think was it the last meeting, October 27th? That's the last meeting. Has everybody?
We did meet in January 26th.
Oh, you had a meeting. Okay.
27th.
So, but I think that, did everyone watch that? Because some of those items.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, so I saw a couple things I want to touch on here because I think they're important. And you all are here and you were appointed to the commission because you're advocates. I've said this to other commissions as well, because you love this stuff, and that's why we appreciate you being on the commission. But you're in this role, so you're not a museum volunteer on the commission. You're representing the city. And so what you've heard staff tell you, and I heard this when I listened to the October 27th meeting, is they're going to provide you, and you did a good job of this, of what findings you need to make in order to make certain decisions. Because you can't just make, oh, I love that house, I think it should stay there. That's not a finding. That's an opinion. And so we need to make decisions on the basis of findings, and that's what staff's job is, to explain it. There was something I heard, and I'm going to give the city attorney permission to correct me if I misstate this, but I heard some concern, and I understand why, but I don't think it's founded, about a slippery slope. That if a particular property is, for example, taken off the registry or whatever the decision may be, that presents a slippery slope. It actually does not. I think it's analogous to variances in land use. Is that correct? You can just give me a nod and then I'll.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, and what that means is each property that you guys, by the definition of your job, evaluate is based on that property alone. There is no precedent set because those exact circumstances are unique to that property. So there is no slippery slope, generally speaking, in the work you're doing. So I want to assure you that that's not a concern. I know, and I also heard, I mean, your packets are big because we get them later and they're big and ours are big to begin with. And so it's a lot of reading. But and we don't get a lot of time to do it. But it's important if you come in and say, I haven't really had the time to do this. It's one thing if there's an emergency or something, but really think about whether you can do the job, because if you have to hold another meeting, we don't have the liberty to say, well, we couldn't get through all 900 pages. You just have to, or if not, then think about whether the fit is right. So this is going to be a little awkward, like what I was saying now wasn't already awkward. But so, Commissioner Scuzel, when you interviewed with us last September, we asked you about Mills Act and our concern about perceived or real conflicts. And you gave us the assurance, and I think if my colleagues remember this, they can shake their head when I explain. You told us you would recuse from Mills Act agenda items. But your very first meeting, you did not do that. I frankly am a little disturbed, and I know there was a conversation that happened, but since I was still disturbed, I decided to bring it up. So I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I would really like to understand if you can give us that assurance, because what happened on October 27th is you participated in a discussion involving Mills Act properties, and then you actually tried to give direction to the commission to explore the Mills Act in additional ways, in an item that council had already taken a position on. We'd already passed an ordinance. So to me, that is concerning. And maybe my colleagues don't agree, but I will turn to them and see how we can come up with a solution. If I'm the only one that has a concern, that's fine. But I wanted to bring it forward because that happened at your very first meeting. Do any of my colleagues have a comment? Yes.
I was the liaison at the time, and we had a nice conversation I think it was in Gabe's office after the fact. And my impression of that discussion was that there had been some gaps in communication and some gaps in understanding. And I felt like we came out of that conversation with a much better shared understanding. The only thing I would sort of seek to remind everybody, because they weren't there to hear this, here's a little translation of city attorney speak, okay? When a city attorney says, my advice is blah, 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 just take it. Just take the advice, right? They're never going to say you have to do X, Y, or Z. That's not the way attorneys talk. So I came out of the conversation feeling like we had filled those voids where not everybody was on the same page. And I would just look to you to see if you had the same sort of takeaway from the conversation.
So I'm happy to respond now, and then I'll entertain other questions. So I did interpret, so first of all, the issue, my house wasn't directly involved. And so when I said I would recuse myself, I was thinking if my house would be involved. And so this was regarding the audit. My home wasn't in the audit, so I didn't think the decision would impact me. So that was one thing. By the time we got to the meeting, it was no longer a decision, it was information only. So then I was like, okay, then I can sit in, because there was no conversation or discussion. So that's why I participated in that. And I did interpret that like it's up to the commissioner, and I thought, and I was like, if I do this, will I put the city at risk? And what I heard was, no, you would take responsibility. So I said, okay, I feel comfortable sitting in on this part of the conversation, and that's what I did. Subsequently had a conversation with Mayor Daley and city manager, and understood that that wasn't a good decision on my part. And the other question about the Mills Act and questioning it, and I think what you mean is I was asking if we could bring the changes back to the commission. I was not suggesting changing any conversation. My comment was during the meeting in August, I guess it was, when the changes to the ordinance were presented to the commission, the historical commission, there were red lines and blue lines, and there was discussion. And when it came to the city council accepted the red lines but not the blue lines. But the commission, when we had the meeting in August, I think there was a presumption. What I heard was we thought that it would come back to the commission before it went to the city council so that we would understand what was being finally presented. That didn't happen. And so my only suggestion or request was, can we know what's actually there? And can we know what was different from before? It wasn't to discuss any change. It was just so that we could understand, because it wasn't clear to me that we knew what was and what was not in the ordinance based on what we had happened in August. So
Right.
That's why.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah.
I can understand that. And I'll just at the core, I felt in the interview what you said to us, had nothing to do with city attorney or specific issues, was that you wouldn't be involved in Mills Act. I will leave it, yes, council member.
Thank you, Mayor. So I had some yellow lights about this earlier. I actually now have red lights. I think what I heard you say was you received advice from the city attorney, but the subject had changed such that you thought that advice no longer applied. Is that correct?
Not exactly. So the city attorney said I can't remember the exact wording, but sort of with abundance of caution, she advised that I recuse myself. But it's ultimately your decision. So I said, okay.
So.
But then when I got to the meeting, but the fact that it wasn't a discussion, then
All right.
confirmed
I think I get it. So you've been appointed to serve on a commission, and the city attorney does not have the authority to make a decision whether or not someone can participate. City attorney does not have the authority to say any of the council members can't participate on an issue. That's just not something that the city attorney can do. The commission handbook clearly says that we want all commissioners to avoid perceived conflicts of interest. It sounds like you might have had an actual conflict of interest. So just putting that on the table for now, and I don't want to be overly dramatic about this, but I do think it needs to be said now. Violations of the Brown Act, no one that I know has ever gone to jail because of a violation of the Brown Act. Actual conflicts of interest are covered by the Political Reform Act. People have gone to jail for violating that, for having an actual conflict of interest and still participating. Again, I know this sounds overly dramatic, and I don't think that anyone's going to file a lawsuit, but in the event that that were to happen, the fact that the city attorney had advised you to recuse would have put you in a very actionable position, and it would have made it difficult for the city to stand behind you. If the city attorney was given all the facts and opined that you can participate, and someone filed a lawsuit, my position would be, hey, we advised the commissioner who gave us all the info that we needed, and she relied on that information. The city should stand behind her. That would not be the case in this situation. So I want to make sure you understand how serious that could end up being.
I appreciate that. I do understand, and I did go in and look at what, I can't remember the exact reference about conflict of interest, but I have reviewed that, so I do understand that I would be on my own.
Okay.
And I better understand what a perceived conflict would be. I was probably being too literal, and I will not make that mistake again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, too, that the reason we're discussing it is not to relitigate or rehash something, because I think we moved past it already, but it's just to make sure that other commissioners don't find themselves in a similar situation. That's all.
And so I would like to, though, the one thing is have you clarify whether what you told us during your interview when we asked you about this, I felt we were given an assurance. So for example, I don't think that you should be doing the work plan item involving reaching out to all Mills Act homeowners, whatever that item is. So that could just be me. If my colleagues feel that that's okay, but I just feel that there was an assurance that you would not, because of that perceived conflict of interest, anytime you're talking about Mills Act does potentially down the road affect your own property. So anyway, just let's wrap it up and have our current
I'm not
liaison.
sure I agree with that.
Okay.
Right? Like reaching out to Mills Act owners and seeing if they want to have an historic plaque does not strike me as a particular conflict. In the end, I think you've taken away the main lesson, which is you talk to the city attorney, and you don't have to, but it's very wise to take the city attorney's advice, and I think you've learned that, and I think it's time to move on.
I'm 100% where you are, Mayor. I don't think it's worth the risk.
The actionable word that we're dealing with is perceived, right? The actionable word is not conflict, right? It's the perception of a conflict. So better safe than sorry in general is always my approach.
So, and again, and there's the definition, but I'm still going back to, I would have made a different appointment if I had known what I know now versus what you told us in the interview. That's all I'm saying. So I can potentially let the liaison do it, take the lead on this, but if it comes up again, I don't know. What were you going to say?
I wasn't going to say anything else. That's it.
Okay. So
I think three of us gave direction for you not to work on that issue.
Anything,
It's the second one on the work plan, improve awareness, conduct the historic plaque program.
Well, I think anything having to do with the Mills Act is something that you should not be a part of.
And does that include reviewing applications from residents who are applying for the Mills Act?
I would think so, but we probably need to get some information from staff and follow up on that. So let's not decide on that now. But I think you're hearing some level of concern. So I think as liaison here, the vice mayor can follow up and get some more definition on that. So, all right. So I think we need to wrap it up. We're going to be about, we're going to call up the Planning Commission. Thank you for all your work. I know it has been a tough year. So, yeah, thanks, you guys. So Planning Commission, for those of you who are here for the regular meeting, we're going to be starting probably about 15 minutes late, probably around 7:15 or 7:20. Oh, how many do you have to choose from?
So many.
So many. All right. So introduce yourselves, even though you really need no introduction, but let's be consistent.
Eric Steinley in my 6th year.
Mayor Sean Ahi, this is my 8th year, and I'm the chair.
Richard Roach, 2nd year, 2nd term, vice chair.
Joe Beninato.
All right. So, Chair, would you like to take us through your work plan?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, council. So for our work plan, we basically have, in addition to doing development project reviews, we are making progress on the housing element implementation, minor code amendments, and also our general plan update. One item that we added was objective design standards amendments. This came about because several projects that we reviewed, basically because of state laws, they were able to ask for unlimited waivers, which basically meant that a lot of the objective design standards were basically not implemented whatsoever. And so many of our standards, I think, are written in a way where they can be waived. And so we thought that there was an opportunity for us to look at some of these standards and find ways to get the same idea behind it where they can't be waived. And I have examples of that if you want. And also there was a discussion about bringing the original consultants back. Personally, I don't know if that's necessary, only because it doesn't affect the entire objective design standards. It only we're looking at very few aspects of it. And also, I think that this is something that is going to be brought back to the council every few years, because as state laws evolve and as projects evolve, this is something that we're going to probably have to look into more. Some of the things that we looked at, 4 or 5 years ago, the maximum height for some of these buildings, we weren't anticipating that we'd have an 8-story building now. So that type of thing. So yeah, that's about it. I don't know if my fellow commissioners have anything else.
Well, I do want to say one thing. Maris is exactly right. When we did the objective standards, one of the things that we were very clear about among ourselves was that these were evolving standards, and we would have to look at them again, and that time has now come. And it has gotten to the point where the standards don't really matter that much anymore as it happens. So we need to figure out a way to have a code that we can actually enforce and that can help people to design buildings that we would like to have. The other thing I want to say is I want to say thank you to the staff. I've been reading staff reports to the Planning Commission for a long time, and they have gotten a whole lot better and fairly recently. It used to be that you would sometimes read one thing in the report, and then things would come up in the presentation, and that's sometimes the nature of the development projects, that it's 52 cart pickup in some instances, but that you would hear things that you hadn't seen in the report that made a difference. And that's not happening now. We're getting very good reports that are very concise. They hit the points that we want. It makes the presentations neater and more helpful, and that makes our job much easier. So I want to, while Stephanie is here and Sean is here, Brittany's not here, but they can tell her. I really do appreciate the work that has gone into making the reports now, because they make our job much, much easier. So they're doing all the hard work so we don't have to.
Councilmember Daley is your liaison this year.
So the last planning meeting was fun. And my feedback is sometimes you got to do the, distasteful task of asking somebody to let somebody else talk and move things along. And you'll get used to that. And it's probably just, I think you've been chair before, so it's not it's not new to you, but that was like, oh, I gotta get back into mode kind of thing, right? The last item on your work plan, I mean, I guess my perception is that something that more or less staff should do and kind of deliver a pretty well packaged report of potential changes that you would then bless or curse or whatever before moving them along to us. Is that your expectation for how that would go?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had talked about maybe the commission kind of looking through it, but ultimately I think you're right that it is going to be something if staff has the bandwidth for that, and seeing what's actually necessary. So yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's on the work plan partly to bring it to your attention.
That's fair. That's great. Because I think the issue for council, well, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I know how I interpret this. I watched as the development on El Camino, came forward with a plethora of exemptions. To a certain extent, that's the intent. That's the intent, right? The intent is higher density. The intent is to allow developers to achieve greater density without having the sort of give and take and negotiation. So I think the issue will be for council, how much do we want to rein that in, right? Because the item on the work plan is kind of positioned in a way to suppose that we do want to rein that in. Maybe some do. I personally am relatively happy with the outcome because I think that housing is a regional challenge. We're part of the problem, and therefore we owe it to the region to be part of the solution. And I'm thankful at times for the way the state law is written, because there are times when public pressure is immense, and some of us might be inclined to even vote against our values per se if the public pressure is really, really great on something. And so the law is written in a way that it actually prevents some of these things from being kind of subjective open issues before bodies like council or the planning commission. So I do think we need to take a look at this particular work plan item as a council and figure out what we want from you guys and staff. And that's my comment on the work plan.
Okay, any comments from my colleagues? Go ahead, Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you. I actually have a differing opinion. And it's not because I want any impotent, any resistance to housing. Quite the contrary. I want the housing built. We need to have the housing built for lots of reasons, legal reasons, value reasons. But 16 waivers is a lot. And I think that our objective standards could be modified in such a way where if a developer doesn't feel they need so many waivers, they may be more willing to look at it in some of the edge cases and perhaps comply with what the objective standards say. I actually think that it's a great idea for this commission to take a look at it this year. Chirahi, if I'm not mistaken, this is your last year, right? So I mean, I don't know how many of you were on the commission when we adopted the objective standards. I mean, it was a very different council that adopted those, but I think have your knowledge of what they are and why they were developed the way they were developed, I think is extremely useful. And I think that it would be a disservice to the city, to our residents, and frankly to developers, if we were to slow walk this and lose some of that institutional knowledge. I'm not looking for ways to slow housing down, but to the extent that we can have just an incentive to have a more unified look as expressed in those objective standards, as opposed to 16 waivers, I'm all for that. And again, I'm worried about the brain drain. I know that you yourself are an architect, so having that skill set on top of your institutional knowledge is a reason that I'm willing to hit the gas pedal on that. And to the extent that a consultant may need to be brought on, if it's under $100,000, that it's in the city manager's purview. I assume the city manager is going to keep us, the council members advised if we're on our 101s, if not in open session, about what's going on. But I think that what you're proposing is important, and I think that it's a benefit to the city. I'm opposed to it to the extent it's going to slow down any housing, but I think that we can really have some good results because of it. And we've seen enough developers trying to use it now to understand where it works and where it doesn't work. On another issue, I want to thank you very much for the quality of your deliberations. You've had at least one, maybe two appeals have come to the council, and that's not a reflection on you. Quite the contrary, you've left us with very good records, and you set a bar for us to establish a good record ourselves in case someone wants to take it further step above. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I echo the thanks. You have some of the most exciting challenges of all our commissions, and appreciate you stepping up to that challenge. I would also agree, I'm in alignment with Councilmember Weinberg on this. I think the key word there is objective, right? That done right, we're actually providing, in a sense, a service to the developers as well as the community, so that as they're working on projects and investing money to get ready to do a project, that they know sort of what's expected and so forth, and it puts us in a very good position then to say, excellent, right, you've done the right thing. So I think done in good faith, and that, I think you're hearing across the board, the intention here is to actually make it easier for people who want to develop housing to know what the lane is and how to get it done as streamlined as possible. Given that, I think the objective part could actually be very helpful towards that end. Thank you.
Thank you all for the work you do. I know a little bit about it. I agree with what my colleague said. I actually would support seeing the item about objective. I remember the first time, we put them together, and I think they could use some fresh eyes with the experience that we've had over, the last 5 or 6 years? It's probably about that time frame, right? So, I'm really interested to hear that you have some creative thoughts about how that can be incorporated. So I think it's a good thing. I support that, and I really appreciate all the work you do. You are part of what you make our jobs easier, and together we've all got a pro-housing designation. So thank you very much for your part in that. Yay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else? I think we're good. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to take 5 to 10 to reconfigure the space, and we'll start the regular meeting as soon as we can do that. Probably closer to 10 minutes, I'd guess.
I think they ought to.
Subtle hint, I didn't get a microphone. All right, so I think we're ready. Is everybody ready? Staff? Yes, yes. So we're going to call to order this meeting of, what is it? It's March 10th, right? Yep, March 10th. And so, City Clerk, would you help establish quorum?
Councilmember Daley,
Here.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lang,
Here.
Mayor Meadows.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, I'm gonna lead us in the pledge, and if you're able and can stand, Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So reporting out on closed session, there's nothing to report either on the closed session that we held after adjourning the February 24th meeting, regular meeting, and nothing to report out from tonight's closed session. So, so colleagues, does anyone have any changes to the order of the agenda they'd like to suggest? Nope. Okay. So with that, we're going to move on to public comments on items not on the agenda.
I have 3 cards.
Okay, and they're all, they're not on agenda items, they're all?
Correct. not
Okay.
agenda.
Let's do 2 minutes.
The first speaker is Richard Probst.
Hi. I'm Richard Probst. I'm the president of Toy and Farm Homeowners Association. There's a bridge on a private road in southern Los Altos that is failing. Residents using the bridge do not feel safe. I talked to someone at Mission Trail. They say their drivers have reported it as a problem. Those are heavy trucks. Our structural engineer told us, quote, "The current conditions will continue to worsen over time and present a life safety hazard for those driving on the bridge." The HOA built this bridge 50 years ago. We've maintained it for 50 years. We want to repair it now, but we can't get a permit. The problem is that it's a private road owned by our neighbor. The HOA has an easement on it, which gives us a right to fix the bridge, but the planning department needs the owner to authorize the permit, and the owner is demanding something in exchange. The property is 2100 Woods Lane. The owner is Blue Creek Capital. They said they will authorize a permit to fix the bridge only if the HOA agrees to, and now I'm going to quote, "formally support Blue Creek's future development and entitlement applications concerning the property, submit written letters of support to the city, appear at public hearings and verbally support such applications, refrain from filing, funding, or supporting appeals, objections, administrative challenges, or litigation, including CEQA claims, not opposing zoning amendments, clustering approvals, density transfers, variances, or related entitlements." The HOA can't do that. This is not a new request, by the way. They said the same thing 2 years ago. The planning department advised us to address this through private legal channels as a disagreement between private parties. And the HOA is ready to take this matter to court if that's the only way. But that will take time, and someone may get hurt in the meantime. City procedures are being abused to prevent the HOA from fixing this bridge in a blatant attempt to extort the HOA to advocate for denser development.
Thank
at
you.
2100
Thank you, Mr.
Woods
Probst,
Lane.
for alerting us to the matter. Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Bill Bassett.
Good evening. Bill Bassett. I live on Distal. For decades, I've supported the council 110%, and I still will, no matter what you do. I did see an article, and the only reason I'm here, I saw an article in last week's Town Crier about a meeting that was held regarding a park downtown. So it struck me, gee, why do we need a park downtown? And they're probably going to take parking away from us. So I would suggest if you ask Los Altos residents if they think there's a problem about downtown, what would they say the problem is? I assure you they'd say the problem is parking. Now what's happened is parklets I support, handicap parking I support, that took some spots away. So right now, if you spend some time on Main Street, what you're going to see is jockeying by cars for positions to get parking on Main. In fact, it's so bad that if you go in one direction and that person happens to see a spot on the other direction, they're making U-turns. And then they're competing with a car that's going in the correct direction for that parking spot. So it's a problem, and it's not going to get any better. Think about the triangle we have. triangle meaning we have downtown, San Antonio, Foothill, and Edith. Now, if somebody wants to go downtown and they cannot park in that triangle, I assure you they're not going to park outside of it. They're going to go somewhere else. We have to preserve the commerce we have with our downtown. Now let's talk about a park. There's a park right across the street. That's been there 25 years, I think. When it was put in, I was interested to see how much activity the park got. The park has this great statue of 5 kids playing in the park. I have never seen anyone in the park.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Your
Time's
time
up.
is up. Yes.
3 minutes is up.
2 minutes.
Oh.
The next speaker is Peter Friedrich.
In October of 2024, this council gave a proclamation directly to a Hindu American Foundation Leadership Council member. HAF's co-founder, an official account, claimed it publicly. Then Mayor Weinberg's signature on the bottom. Did he know what he was signing? Did this council know that HAF faces a formal complaint accusing it of acting for a foreign government? And the DOJ has been asked to investigate it under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. India, the government they're accused of acting for, had its intelligence officer charged for directing an assassination plot against a Sikh American on American soil. 3 weeks ago, after the operative pled guilty, HAF's managing director went on a podcast and laughed about it, mocked the assassination as sloppy work, said, if you're going to do a job, do it right. This is the organization then Mayor Weinberg honored. 12 months later, October 2025, HAF used proclamations like yours to help destroy SB 509, a bill to train law enforcement to recognize foreign government targeting in their jurisdiction. Your county's own district attorney, Jeff Rosen, keynoted an HAF session that trained officers to treat Sikh activists as terrorist suspects requiring surveillance. The Police Chiefs Association endorsed the bill. Both chambers passed it unanimously. HAF lobbied to kill it, celebrated that too, called it a victory for civil rights. This council's proclamation was not a courtesy. It was a weapon. It went to an organization facing a formal complaint for acting as a foreign agent, an organization that mocked the assassination attempt on an American citizen, an organization training your county's law enforcement who to surveil, and an organization that destroyed the bill designed to stop it. Councilmember Weinberg signed it, and this council should answer for it. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. I'm going to, for those who are new to making public comments on items not on the agenda, I'm going to point out that by law, the City Council is unable to discuss or take action on issues presented during the public comment period. According to state law, items must first be noted on the agenda before any discussion or action. So thank you for speaking tonight, but we will not be discussing it during the rest of the meeting. So with that, we're going to move on to the consent calendar and see if any of my colleagues want to pull an item. Nothing? Okay. I don't want to pull an item, but I do just want to make a clarification on, well, actually, why don't I go ahead and take public comment on consent first, and then I'll make my clarification after that. So one card?
We have one card.
Okay, let's take 2 minutes again.
The speaker is Yanhua Mao. Yes.
So I just want to comment that given the I'm pro-housing, at the same time, I think the city is short of thousands of affordable housing. Very recently, we talked about the El Camino project. I think it produced only 10 affordable housing out of 16 waivers and 85 units. That's very low ROI, in my opinion. And our current policy and objective standard is not producing the outcome we necessarily need. We need to create the right incentive to help developers to get to the outcome. At the same time, we also need to have broader and maybe a longer period of community engagement. We had 3 days, in many cases, just to understand that's like a story building. That's really not enough for the community. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on the consent calendar? So I want to make a comment on item number 4, City Council strategic goals. I don't think we need to pull it, but I think as phrased, and one comment had mentioned this. It says the City of Los Altos will continue providing excellent public safety for the community by engaging the community in emergency preparedness best practices. I don't think that's right. It's either and engaging, or we should say all the public safety. So the way it's written right now, it talks about as though engaging the community is what is our tool for providing public safety. It is something that we do, but we have other things. So I don't know if my colleagues had reacted to that. Vice Mayor.
I might have written the question. I would be fine with changing by to and. I think that would solve the problem.
Yeah. Okay, so with wordsmithing, but I think it was important. So with that, I can take a motion for, oh,
Mayor,
yes.
I support what you say. Along the same lines, on number 4, where it says the City of Los Altos will strive to lead, everywhere else it says that we will do this or we will do that. I thought that this should say the City of Los Altos will lead in environmental sustainability.
I think it was changed to shall.
It was changed to shall?
Yes,
I
in
thought
the
I saw it
version I
said
have.
strive.
Okay.
It said shall strive. But I think strive is the word that
I see what you're saying.
that the council should take umbrage with.
Okay, I'm fine with that as well. All right, so with those minor comments, I think we have items 1 through 5. Can I have a motion?
I'll move to accept. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the goals, not the consent calendar, 1
I'll
through
move
4.
to accept the consent calendar with those 2 minor wording amendments to the strategic goals.
Second.
Councilmember Daley?
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lang?
Yes.
Mayor Meadows?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so with that, we will move on to the first discussion item. This is AB 481, Military Equipment Use Annual Report. Captain Kraus.
I have my PowerPoint up. I'm just waiting for it to load for you guys here. You have it on
There
your
you go.
screens?
It's
Oh,
up
there
now.
it is right there. Thank you. All right. Good evening, council members, mayor and vice mayor. Thank you for having me here today. This is our annual report for AB 41, which goes over military equipment funding, acquisition, and use. So as you probably know, but our audience may not, AB 41 has some requirements. It requires council to approve the military equipment use policy annually. It also requires it to be a new ordinance to be reviewed and adopted every year. AB 41 requires the law enforcement agency to provide an annual report, and that has to include how our equipment was used the prior year, all the maintenance costs and other training costs, any internal audits, meaning any complaints that we got about the items of military use, and community feedback on those uses. And then it also requires us to get council approval for the acquisition or purchase of any new equipment for the coming year. So we first obviously took our military equipment use policy to council back in 2022, and annually we have returned to get our policy reviewed and the ordinance readopted. What it also requires, AB 41 does require us to have an annual report that we publish every year on our law enforcement webpage, and that annual report has to stay posted for as long as we have the military equipment still in use. And then another thing, in addition to the annual report, we also have to have a community meeting that is well advertised and that allows the community to give feedback on the annual report after it's published. So we published the annual report on February 4th, 2026 to our law enforcement webpage. And then we had our community meeting on February 18th. That community meeting was held at the community center from 6 to 7 p.m. It was also broadcast on Zoom for those who could not attend in person, and it was recorded for those who could not attend on Zoom that they could watch at a later time. It has been posted on our law enforcement webpage. So our annual report, the only uses of military equipment that we had in 2025 was our drones. So we used our drones a total of 17 times from April when they first got approved and got into our inventory through December of 2025. We had no complaints at all about any of the uses of our military equipment in the past year. We had no policy violations that we could find on military equipment. The total annual cost for the maintenance of the equipment is about $4,800. Something that we added this year in the annual report after a citizen pointed out to us that it was part of the requirements of AB 41 that we were unaware was the annual training costs that are also associated with the military equipment use. So we calculated that out. I just want to be clear, I did put this in the report and the staff report, that we overestimated the cost of the training because it's nearly impossible for us to account for every single employee and the training costs for every item. So what we did is instead we took the top step pay for an officer on overtime, and then we took all the hours of training that our officers attended in the past year. Most of that training had to do with the rifles at range because they go out and they shoot the rifles multiple times during the year. And in addition, our SWAT team, as you can tell by the table that was in the annual report, our SWAT team goes and trains regularly, and that includes several range days that they have in addition to the other equipment. So using that top step officer rate on overtime is how we calculated the annual training cost for all of the military equipment, which came to about $318,000 as our overestimation. I call that an overestimation because there are a lot of people who make less than a top step officer. There are some who make more, but more make less than that. And not all officers attend training on overtime. Some officers are able to attend training on their normal workday, as long as we maintain our 3-officer minimum. But our training for our traffic units or our investigations team who are not on patrol, they can go to training on regular time. Therefore, it's not actually at the overtime rate. In looking at that number, it does seem like a lot. However, as you guys know, military equipment is our highest liability item. So we feel like the training cost is worth it to make sure that our officers are well equipped to handle all that equipment that we are handing them. And then also the quantity possessed is listed in the inventory of policy 709. That's another requirement of the annual report. At the community meeting that we had on February 18th, a resident did request that we start including the inventory as part of the annual report. So moving forward, we are going to actually include it. At the end of the annual report will be the full inventory will be there as opposed to being a separate document, which he felt might be a little bit confusing and not meeting the requirements of the annual report. So moving forward, we will include that in the annual report. As part of the annual report, we do have to come to council with any new equipment requests that we are asking for in the coming year. This year, we are requesting one item. It would be the Throwbot 2. We just call it the Throwbot typically. It is a micro robot platform. What that means is it's tiny. It is 1.8 pounds total, and it is 8 inches across. So it is just a little bit bigger than a soda can, and it is lightweight, and it is able to be thrown a distance of, I believe it's 120 feet without destroying it or damaging it. And it can be dropped onto concrete from heights of 30 feet. Now, the purpose behind the Throwbot is exactly what the name says. You can throw the robot into a residence or into even an outdoor area from a distance so that your officers don't have to get that close to the dangerous situation. These are typically going to be used only by our SWAT team. And mostly it's going to be used for barricaded subject situations or maybe hostages. The purpose behind them is that you throw that robot in through a window that might be broken or an open door. The robot then is maneuvered by that little controller you see on the screen. The robot does have a camera on it and audio. So that audio and video comes through the device that the operator has outside with the remote control. So they can see and hear what the robot is seeing and hearing inside the residence. At the community meeting, people asked, well, why is this different than the interior drone that we got permission to use before? Number one, this is quieter. The drones, obviously, as you know, make a humming noise, and so suspects would be able to know the drone was in the vicinity. In addition, this can maneuver a little bit better around doorways that might be slightly open, whereas the drone is required to have a larger space. And in addition, the micro robot can be used to transport items. For example, if we're doing a hostage negotiation and the subject inside is requesting food, he wants an In-N-Out hamburger, or he wants a soda, or maybe we need to deliver a phone to him to further communication, there is a package that can be attached to the Throwbot that allows you to either tow an item in or place an item on top of the robot in order to deliver it inside. It could be medicine or any other thing that might aid in negotiations. Not weaponized, because that's outside of our policy, just to be clear on that. So the cost of it's about approximately $19,000. It would be paid for with the COPS grant. Our intention is to, if this is approved tonight, is to come back at a future meeting to have this approved through the COPS grant in the coming months. So it would not be an impact on general fund currently. It could potentially be used by not the SWAT operators. If someone is trained and there's a patrol situation that comes up where the Throwbot would be useful, if we have a trained operator, it certainly could be used in those instances as well. For example, if we have a call of a welfare check, someone says, my friend's suicidal, that say they're going to commit suicide with a gun or by chemicals. We can send the Throwbot in order to demonstrate and see if there's a weapon inside or possibly if there's chemicals and prevent our officers from being injured or hurt by trying to enter that residence. Additional inventory changes that were on the red line version of the inventory that we are just wanting to get council's approval for. It's a couple removal of some items. First is the less lethal shotguns. So if you remember in prior years, we had gotten 40 millimeter weapons as less lethal so that we could get rid of the less lethal shotguns. So we now have gotten rid of, we had 11, and we're trying to move it down to 1. And that's that one that would be used for the chemical agents, which those equipment to add on to the shotgun was approved by council for chemical agent munitions in order to launch them into a structure. So we want to change that quantity from 11 to 1 and also get rid of all the less lethal shotgun rounds that are in the inventory. We no longer have those, so we're going to get rid of those. And then the Benelli M3 12-gauge shotgun, we have also gotten rid of that. And so we want to remove that from the inventory as well. We no longer have that weapon. And then some replacement items. The first one is an increase in the 223 ammo. That's the ammunition that our Daniel Defense rifles would be shooting. Currently, I have to look at the inventory on what we currently have. We want to increase the amount to 42,000 rounds, and I know that sounds like a very large increase. However, now that our officers are all issued out the Daniel Defense rifles, we have to go and do training with them a little bit more often on their specific weapons. And so we did burn through a lot of our ammunition, getting all of our operators certified on the Daniel Defense rifles, which happened in February. They went out and had an entire day of rifle training. We also have a lot of new officers, and they have to go through extensive rifle training in order to carry the rifle in the first place. And so in the past, there's been a shortage of 223 ammunition. So we didn't ask for a great amount. That shortage has now passed, and 223 ammunition is available. So we would like to increase our allotment at a maximum of 42,000. It doesn't mean that's what we would always have. We wouldn't be able to exceed 42,000 rounds. Secondly, the 308 ammunition, I think currently we have around 3,000 rounds that has been authorized. We'd like to increase that to 3,300 rounds, so a slight increase there. And the other change is the brand designation. So right now in the inventory, it gives a specific brand of ammunition that we are permitted to purchase. That has become very limiting to us because sometimes that ammunition brand is not available. And so we would just like permission to purchase 308 ammunition without the brand designation so that we can purchase whatever brand is readily accessible and works for our current needs. So those are the replacement items we were looking for there. And I believe that is in my presentation. Any questions?
Why do we designate 308 rounds as 308 and not 7.62 if we designate 223 as 223?
I don't have an answer for that I do not know. I just know we buy 308 rounds. That's
So
all.
if you need to buy 308 rounds, I mean, 7.62 is a NATO 308 round with more, I mean, I think the wording might be important just to provide the flexibility of purchase. So make sure that we have the wording right on those calibers, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
In the Q&A, I was asking what was happening to the Colt rifles, and it was mentioned of a trade-in. I wanted to make sure that they're going someplace safe.
Yes, so when we do replacement of weapon systems, what we do is we trade them into LC Action, which is a gun dealership that works with law enforcement down in San Jose. So we trade them into them, and so they're an authorized firearm dealer. Whether they sell them again to another law enforcement agency, sell them out as parts, beyond us giving them to them, and then they give us a value trade that we use for future purchases of weapons, body-worn vests, things of that nature. So we trade them into an authorized retailer.
Councilmember Weinberg, do you have anything?
No questions, but I would like to say thank you very much. I know that I peppered you with a lot of questions about the throwbots. I spent a lot of time researching them, and I do appreciate, I know that it took a lot of time to answer them. I do appreciate you spending the time to do that.
No problem.
Yes, thank you, Captain Krause. I don't have any questions either, so we'll see if we have public comment. How many cards do we have?
I have no cards.
No cards. Oh, okay. So opening up public comment, no cards. Closing public comment. Okay. So bring it back to council for deliberation and or a motion.
I'm happy to make it. Am I moving? Oh, I'm sorry. You have, okay.
I would just like to make one comment, which is I appreciate calling out the training, especially if that's what the law requires. I want to say I'm just very supportive of the training. The equipment doesn't keep us safe. Well-trained officers with the equipment keep us safe. It's really a worthwhile investment. Very supportive of it. Thank you for calling it out, but I felt that was worth saying. You sounded almost a little apologetic for the number. Obviously, we don't want to waste money, but training is a very good investment and very supportive of that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion then.
I'm going to look at the staff to help me out. Am I just reintroducing the ordinance that already exists?
You could just read the language that's on the agenda underneath the bold.
Review and renew.
Review and review the ordinance. Under
Okay.
item 5.
I move that the City Council review and renew the ordinance by introduction and waiving further reading of the ordinance approving Los Altos Police Policy 709 pertaining to the funding, acquisition, and use of military equipment as mandated by AB 481, and that we find that this action is categorically exempt from CEQA.
Second.
Councilmember Daley?
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lang?
Yes.
Mayor Meadows?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much for that update. So we'll move on to number 6, fire protection services. Who's going to present? Okay, Mr. Maginot.
I too have. Okay. I too have a presentation. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. This item is a discussion on fire protection services within the city of Los Altos. For some background, the city began contracting with Santa Clara County Fire in 1996. Now, I will note that when I refer to Santa Clara County Fire, I am referring to both the Santa Clara County Fire Department as well as the Santa Clara County Central Fire Protection District, which is the special district for fire protection services. So when throughout the presentation in the evening, when I refer to county fire, I'm referring to one or both of those. Our agreement with county fire operated on 10-year contracts. Those were renewed in 2006 as well as 2016. Our current agreement with County Fire expires on December 31st of this year. Back in June of 2025, Council directed staff to look at options for our fire protection services. And then in October, Council approved non-automatic renewal of our current agreement. So our current agreement had a provision that would automatically renew unless notice was given of non-automatic renewal, which was done. Staff looked at a number of different options, including negotiation of a new contract with County Fire, annexation into the County Fire District, whether or not a different service provider could be secured, or potentially setting up our own internal fire department. After looking at the various benefits and drawbacks of each option, we've come forward with a recommendation to move forward with annexation into the County Fire District. As part of potential annexation, this would include a transfer of property tax from the city to the fire district. In essence, the city would see a reduction in property tax revenue, but at the same time, we'd see an equal or greater reduction in expenditures that we're paying to County Fire. As well, it would include the transfer of the 2 fire stations to the county, as well as a $1.5 million lump sum payment for deferred maintenance. This is maintenance that the city was responsible for that we've put on hold due to various budget and financial decisions. As it is an annexation, it would be required to go through the LAFCO process for approval, as they are the body that reviews and approves or denies annexation proceedings. The LAFCO process is very detailed and complex, so much so that it'd be hard to fit it all into one slide. So I've kind of pulled out the highlights of the process. Before council is a resolution to approve submission of an application to LAFCO for annexation. The County Board of Supervisors this morning approved a resolution in support of a potential application. In essence, the city will be the one submitting the application to LAFCO, and the county has said that they are supportive of our application should we submit it. If council approves the action tonight, we will submit our application to LAFCO on or before April 2nd. That is so that we can make the June hearing at LAFCO. The LAFCO board meets 4 times a year, and so in order to, excuse me, that's wrong, 6 times a year. And so in order to get onto the agenda, we have to apply 2 months in advance. We anticipate that we will then provide supplemental information following our application to LAFCO. We have spoken with staff at LAFCO, and they are amenable to that arrangement. Part of that will be on April 14th. We will come back to council to present the financial aspects of the annexation for your consideration and approval. As I mentioned, we then have our hearing before LAFCO in June, and then anticipate receiving LAFCO approval sometime in the fall. That is because they have their own process that they go through where they hear an item and there's public comment and appeal times and whatnot, and they consider and deliberate. And so we would anticipate fall of this year receiving approval, and that the annexation would become effective on January 1 of 2027. So our next steps, again, provided that council approves the item tonight, we will submit our application to LAFCO. We'll continue to work with the county on finalizing the details of the property tax transfer as well as the transfer of the fire stations. And then, as I said, come back to council on April 14th to review and approve the financial aspects of the annexation. One thing I did want to note, what doesn't change through this process, fire and protection and emergency medical services, those will continue to be provided by County Fire at the same service levels they are now, or I might say even better than what we are getting at the moment. 911 response will not change. So when a member of the community calls 911, it will go to our police department dispatchers, who will then transfer it over to the county if it's a fire or emergency medical call, same as is happening today. And then property taxes, there will be no changes in anyone's property tax. It will simply be the dollars will be directed to a different entity. And so, again, the recommended action for tonight is to approve a resolution directing us to submit an application for annexation into the Santa Clara County Central Fire Protection District, and directing us to continue negotiating the property tax transfer as well as the transfer of the fire stations as part of the annexation. And so with that, I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And more than that, thank you for the work that you, the city manager, and your staff have been putting into this. I know that this has been a tremendous amount of work, and the effort has not gone unnoticed at all. It just so happens that as an attorney, I'm dealing with LAFCO in San Mateo County, just trying to annex one house from the county into the city of San Carlos, and that process has been overwhelming. I thank you for being the ones that are trying to get us into a fire district. Do you know whether or not the Board of Supervisors, does anyone know whether the Board of Supervisors tonight passed their item?
Yes.
Which is on consent?
This morning.
This morning.
So the Board of Supervisors is on board then? Okay.
Correct.
And then just a few things that I want confirmation. I think you know the answers to these, but just want to make a record of them. Assuming that the city moves forward with annexation, the process is really going to be invisible to the community, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And even though the city will be receiving considerably less money in property taxes, we're not receiving revenue and then paying it to the county. Essentially, the county is getting that revenue directly.
Correct.
Okay. And also, there's going to have to be a lot line adjustment for the firehouse by the MSC, correct?
Correct.
And so the MSC is actually going to shrink in size, at least on paper, and the county is getting more than just what the parcel looks like today.
Correct.
All right. Now, if we do proceed with annexation, if that process is completed, then the city will no longer be able to use the firehouses as collateral for any loan or any other purpose. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just a few points of clarification on the firehouses. There might be a perception on the part of the public that this is some major value that we are contributing to this deal. But I would like your comments on the future CIP liabilities associated with the fire stations that will now become county responsibility.
Correct. So currently under the current agreement with County Fire, the city is responsible for what I'll call major maintenance and improvements to the fire stations. The county has made some minor modifications to meet their needs and whatnot, but the major modifications would be required for the city. As I mentioned earlier, we have at least $1.5 million in deferred maintenance. In reality, we probably have a lot more than that. And if the stations were ever needed to be replaced at any point, that would be up to the city to fund the replacement of the facilities.
So items like a potential roof on a fire station that would cost millions and millions, or rebuilding of a $30 to $50 million facility, which were likely to be in our CIP over the next couple years, those are burdens that we are eliminating from the city obligation.
Yeah, if the properties were transferred to the county, then the county would be responsible for that.
Thank you.
Another question. Under a contract, there's no legal limit to what increases they can ask for. Whereas going forward, is it true that the same Prop 13 breaks on new revenue apply to them just as they do to everybody else who lives on property tax?
Yeah, so the second part of that is yes, there would still be the same restrictions. The first part is it would depend on the contract. So our current 10-year agreement has some restrictions on what they can increase. Since we haven't gone down the road of negotiating,
Right.
we don't know what a new contract
But
might have.
the example of what has gone on with the sheriff in other jurisdictions might be a caution about what happens if you don't have the Prop 13 safety.
So, Vice Mayor Lang, that's correct. The current contract had, if it was an automatic renewal, it had a floor and a ceiling for what the increase would be. What cities are experiencing with the sheriff is when costs increase dramatically faster than the contract. At the end of a contract, those costs come due. When we look into the future of public safety, particularly in fire, those costs are going to increase quite dramatically with everything from the type of equipment needed to the number of personnel who are required to operate that equipment. The best way to ensure a professional, adequate fire response for Los Altos is through annexation. So as the needs in the fire department grow, the property taxes grow along with that. It's no longer a negotiation, and they're able to plan accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your work on this. I know it's taken a lot to get us to this point. So since the Board of Supervisors supported their resolution, was it resolution this morning? So we are confident that both parties, us and them, are moving forward in good faith towards this annexation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of timing, we know the wheels of government, especially when they're not our own wheels, we can say the wheels of LAFCO might move slowly. What happens if there were a gap? So our contract ends at the end of December this year, and we're hoping that by January 1st, then we're annexed. What happens if we're not quite through LAFCO or whatever?
Yeah, in our conversations with County Fire, they've indicated that they would continue to provide fire services, and we'd figure out payment to them for those services.
Okay, great, thank you. Sounds a little ambiguous, but we'll leave it at that for the moment.
We'll still have fire protection services.
Okay,
regardless, yes.
all right. And my colleagues were asking questions around the current fire stations. I'm going to ask it from another perspective. So for annexation, we would transfer the ownership of the land, and the buildings. The maintenance goes with it. And if we keep it, then we have the land, but it's still going to be housing fire stations, and then we're responsible for the maintenance. So it's not like we can actually, so if we were under contract, for example, this might help people understand why we've gone this route of annexation. If we were under contract, we're still using that land for fire services, correct?
Correct.
Right. And so this way then is essentially trading the value of the land to the county, but the visible nature, Councilmember Weinberg talked about invisible, though that might speak of not transparent, but you didn't mean invisible as in not transparent. You meant seamless, sort of structural.
The average user of the service would not know.
Right, that nobody would really detect a difference. And so that is the case also just for the difference between the land and the buildings in the annexation process versus ownership, correct?
Correct, yeah.
It's a long yes or no
Yeah,
question. Okay. I think, so the next steps, as you said, then about a month from now, the first April meeting, we're going to see some further detail and by the, and so, and that will also be updated to our website that you are running on the annexation process.
Yes.
And the answer to
will.
that is yes.
Yep.
Okay, so let's take public comment then. Oh, yes, go right ahead.
Sorry, one question that I forgot, but I thought was important to ask. Although this is referred to as Santa Clara County, the district operates separately. It's a separate pool of money. So whatever financial challenges the county itself may face, this is a distinct set of money that is walled off from that. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I'm going to look to the county staff. Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a special district.
Independent district.
Yeah,
Independent special district.
okay. And I wish the county the very best.
Okay, so then we'll open it to public comment, and you have one speaker card. So if anyone else wants to speak, please fill out a card. But so we're going to give 3 minutes on this topic.
Okay, and the speaker is Bob Hegg.
Good evening. Before we start the clock, it's my fault we changed the name from Central Fire to Santa Clara County because I hung around with a lot of Santa Clara firefighters and I was too embarrassed to wear a Los Altos shirt, so I wore a Santa Clara City fire shirt. And then we merged, and then Chief Sport Leader called me and said, hey, we're changing our name to Santa Clara County, so I don't want to see you wearing any of that Santa Clara City shit around our stations anymore. So that's what happened. And I was responsible for meeting with your former mayor, Patty Williams, who I talked to today. And that's her proudest accomplishment, was bringing us to county fire. You were protected by the absolute worst fire department around. Training, inadequate equipment.
I think the clock is running, so you don't want to go into those details,
anyway,
perhaps.
We went from being the worst to the best. And some of our members didn't survive because they couldn't survive in that high degree of standard and buck the system. And it went from everywhere from being suspended for one firefighter who was suspended for 9 shifts and eventually shown the door. So now we're good as the best and better than the rest. I'm still very involved with county fire. When I became a truck captain, they sent me to Phoenix, Arizona to learn how to be a truck captain because Phoenix is the best in the nation. And our motto was good as the best and better than the rest. And we still have that high standard. You don't want to lose that. You're being protected by the best fire department in California. Plain and simple. And I'm still very involved with it. When our firefighters were out of town fighting fires, they're very involved in the community. The retired guys came in and picked up the slack for them because we're still part of the family. Once you're a firefighter, you're always. And I'm very emotional about this because I put in a lot of work with 2 other guys that passed away and never got to retire from job-related cancer from a house. We traced it back to a house on University Avenue, and it actually killed one of our police officers also. So these guys gave their lives putting Los Altos in the best hands possible. Don't let that slip away, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, one last thing. We took a rookie with us, and he was worried about getting laid off, and he came to work for me, and I said, would you quit worrying? You're a very good firefighter, and I fully expect you to be a fire chief someday. Former Fire Chief Tony Bowden. I raised him since he was a pup.
All right, the next speaker would be, on that note, right?
Tony Bowden.
Yes, okay. Well orchestrated.
Good evening. I kind of felt like I had to bring it home a little bit there, Bubba. I appreciate that. First, I just wanted to say thank you. The city of Los Altos gave me my start. I was the last firefighter hired in the city of Los Altos. I made the long walk from Sequoia Station up the sidewalk to pick up checks every Friday because I was the low man on the totem pole. Came over to County Fire and worked my way up, and was very blessed to make it to fire chief and retire before Suwana Kurtkow is now fire chief. Awesome fire chief you have. I'm here just really in support, watching the transition and being part of the city of Los Altos and the city of Los Altos family. As a firefighter, I promoted to captain. They put me at Loyola Station as my first assignment. They promoted me to battalion chief. They put me at El Monte Station at my first assignment. I spent a lot of my career in the city of Los Altos, the town of Los Altos Hills, and I'm just very blessed and fortunate and very appreciative. And it's really exciting for me. I now live in Gilroy, so this is a bit of a drive to come up here. But it was so important for me to come up here and just experience this, because it really solidifies what we have worked so hard to accomplish in the city of Los Altos and to watch fire protection grow in the northern part of this county. So thank you. I deeply appreciate your work on this. Gabe, I appreciate your work on this. I still hear things. I still kind of talk to people. Anyways, thank you, and I look forward to seeing this process proceed.
Thank you very much for your service, too. All right. With that, we're closing public comment and bring it back to council for deliberation or a motion.
I'll start. I'm very supportive of this action. I think we touched on a number of the financial considerations. I think it's a better financial arrangement for the residents. But I think even more importantly, I think it's a way of getting closer for better service and better protection and better safety. One of the things that I think we learned from the fires in Southern California recently is that those kind of conflagrations are regional threats. The fire is going to be very disinterested in where city boundaries are if such a thing were to happen. And to be a part of the well-organized, I had the opportunity to go down to Campbell and tour the new headquarters there and see some of the systems that are in place there in terms of the GIS and the other coordination systems, and just the level of professionalism among that group, as well as, of course, touring the fire stations and meeting some of the talented people who work there. I think this is going to be of great service to our community, as well as a sensible financial thing. We have some more bureaucratic and accounting challenges ahead of us before we get to the end of the road, but I certainly hope we can navigate those. And I'll just close by saying how grateful I am to the staff, to our city manager, all of you for working so hard on this, because this has not been an easy process, but I think we're going to end up in the right place.
I want to say a word about the men and women who constitute the fire department here in Los Altos and the wider fire department in Santa Clara County. As we looked at all the different options, we were presented with some options that at face value looked like they might have been less expensive. And part of that is because those options were sort of arbitraging different labor rates for different fire services. And I generally oppose anything that exploits, differential wage rates for labor. And I don't think that we would have ever seen those cost savings anyway. But my comment is really just, I do like that we are moving to a system that is tied to property tax. And what that really means, the property tax engine in Los Altos is strong. We all know that. It's partially because we have valuable real estate. It's also partially because of our demographics and the frequency with which parcels get reassessed. And they go from, their Prop 13 rate was established decades ago, to the market rate. So what that means for the men and women who are actually going to wear the uniform and protect us is that there's a steady, reliable, forecastable, predictable revenue stream, and that they won't be faced with budget cuts that require reductions in force. The people of Los Altos can be secure in knowing that they will be protected by the best of the best, and those that do the protecting can be secure in their employment and in their long-term prospects within this community. So on balance, I think that's a priceless outcome.
I'm where the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Daley are. To our public speakers tonight, I want to thank you very much. I not only did I enjoy hearing it, but I think I needed to hear it. I think our community needed to hear it. So thank you for making those comments. More than that, thank you for the service that you have given to the city and the community and the county as a whole. Thank you very much. The one modification that I would like to propose to the resolution that's in front of us is that County Fire provides fire protection services, but it also provides emergency medical services. And in the resolution, there are 3 of the whereases where it only mentions fire protection services. There's another whereas where it says fire and emergency medical services. So I would propose that the final resolution read fire and emergency medical services consistently throughout the document, and not just limit some of the whereases to fire protection.
I completely support that.
Same.
Yeah, so that's good. Was that your comment? I have
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Just in case it hasn't been clear, I'm going to repeat in a different way what we've all been saying, is when we refer to property tax that the county gets out of this, the property tax it's from the city's portion of property tax. It is not from any resident's portion of property tax. So that's how this is getting paid for. So I think that's kind of been said, but I just want to be sure we're very, very explicit. It's the city's portion of property tax. No one's property taxes will change whatsoever when this moves forward. So with that, I think we're ready for a motion. Would anyone care to make it? Go right ahead.
I move that the council adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Los Altos initiating application by the City of Los Altos for annexation into the Santa Clara County Central Fire Protection District. And this, of course, is the draft resolution that came with the Q&A today, and for that document to be amended as we discussed.
Second?
Councilmember Daley?
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lang?
Yes.
Mayor Meadows?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you all for being here tonight and for all the hard work that's gone into this. We'll keep moving it forward. So with that, we're going to move on to number 7, a review of City Council norms and procedures. This is an item that we first took up a couple meetings ago, and so there have been numerous changes incorporated. Again, I think we want to avoid going through a wordsmithing exercise, but I do want to call attention to, in the Q&A, there were some suggestions that were agreed to on the norms, and then there's some that say this would be at the discretion of City Council. So I think all that really remains, unless anyone wants to bring up something that's not already included in the norms, is we should just address the ones that staff said are at the discretion of City Council, unless someone else proposes a different process. No, okay. So there was a suggestion that the language in 1.1 purpose, which added, sorry, I don't have, let me pull up the norms. The very good addition in 1.1, oh, this is not the right one either, adding the verbiage around, John, can you help me with this, because you probably have it. That was about whether the ADA language should be kept in 1.1 purpose or added to the other section 1.4 about applicable laws. wherever it fits best, it's a great addition, but we want to be sure it's in the right place. Anybody, any of my colleagues have any comments?
I think 1.4 makes more sense.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're going to move that to 1.4. Let's see, section 6.5. That I own that one. Proclamations and certificates. It should just say both throughout in section 6.5 because now we've got this nice logical process. We're asking, and actually the website can be updated to say proclamations and certificates as well. But to be clear that there's options for both because we're doing both. Any disagreement with that? No. Okay. So we're going to make that, sorry, this, so when you say this can be added like in 8.12, does that mean this can be added if council says so, or you're going to, so in 8.12, it's not.
Yeah, we can add it. We'll add it.
You're just going to add it, right? Okay, because there's a difference if you restore communication versus if you don't. So, okay. 10.10, you've also said this, you're going to add about items on the agenda. And if anyone has any objections as we scroll through this, please shout out. So in the one, it's the second to last, it says, in section 8.1, we refer to allowing members of, so this is a question about when we are starting, and I know we had an informational item recently about when we're fully adopting 707. I believe that the deadline is July 1st. The norms are written as though we're fully in effect. So if we adopt the norms, are we fully adopting 707, or is that in July? And how would we designate that in these?
Madam Mayor, I have
Yes.
a suggestion.
Yes, please.
In front of the city council will provide, I'd say, as an eligible legislative body, no later than July 1, 2026.
Okay, that's good, because that's exactly the thank you very much. Mr. Maginot, you got it? Okay. Discretion of the council, 11.12. The council member shall abstain. The proposal is that the council member shall abstain from participating until the FPPC opinion is received. This is on a potential item, whereas now it said may abstain. City attorney, it seems to me if we don't have a ruling, someone should abstain, not keep voting.
Yes, they can. It should be a shall, and
Okay.
the kind of the wrinkle on that is if you're getting an FPPC opinion and the matter needs to be continued, the person that the opinion may affect can still vote on that continuance. So that's just.
But you can remind us of
at
that
the
at the time, or, yeah, okay, good.
I'm sorry to play
Councilmember
devil's
Weinbeck.
advocate here. What if a council member thinks that the law is wrong or wants to try to challenge the law?
You mean the FPPC?
So
opinion?
I can say I understand there's a case out there that suggests that I should not be participating in discussion on this issue, but I think that case was wrongly decided. I think there's a new Supreme Court, and if I were to challenge this, I would get the old ruling overturned.
I would say they still can't participate until the law's changed.
So you think that we're taking away their ability to challenge the law then?
No, they could still go challenge the law, but they're just not going to be able to vote on it until the law is clear. I mean, you can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to, and then not, 5 years later say, oh. Well.
Happens all the time. It happens all the time. People violate under what was understood to be the law in an effort to get the law changed.
Yes. But are you talking about the conflict law?
Well, I'm talking about anything that someone wants to participate. Wait. You know what? This is so much of an edge case. Never mind. I'll talk to you about it another time.
Okay.
Okay, so City Attorney, you feel shall is correct. Councilmember Daley, you have something to add?
I don't think it should be shall. I think it is incumbent upon individual council members to determine whether or not there is a conflict of interest. That's the way the law is written. We are the ones that are in jeopardy if our interpretation is incorrect, but ultimately it's our interpretation. And I've heard the city attorney on many occasions say something along the lines of, I advise you to recuse, or this looks like something you might want to recuse on, or yes, it looks like there might be a perception of a conflict of interest, but not once has she ever said you must or you shall, because that's not the way the law is written. It's incumbent on us to make that determination. And we just had this come up earlier in our meeting.
But I would say this is different because this is council norms, and we are saying to each other that if we have a potential conflict that we're going to run up the FPPC flagpole, we want each of us as colleagues to not be voting on something until the FPPC has ruled on it. Commissioners don't, I think, tend to run things up to the FPPC. I could be wrong, but so I think this is something that we can state as such. I would support a shall. Vice Mayor?
I don't love shall, right? Because ultimately, I'm responsible to voters, not the FPPC, right? The FPP, and if the FPPC has an opinion, and I'm still at jeopardy, right? It's in the end advisory, right? You know, I certainly would be very hesitant to get into that situation. The safe haven would be very appealing to me. But the notion, particularly because the FPPC is notorious at times for how long they can take, right? So the notion to say that I will not vote on something, despite the fact I was elected to vote on things, because the FPPC is taking a long time to resolve the thing, strikes me as something. I mean, personally, I'd be very hesitant. I mean, I'm very respectful of these things and so forth, but the notion that somehow my hands are tied until this bureaucracy says I can vote seems wrong.
But let's be clear about what we're talking about here. This is not an ordinance. This is not something that is compelling. The real question is, if somebody decides that they want to if they want to go against the advice of council or an FPPC opinion or a case or a statute, in terms of what we're doing tonight, the question is, should the council be able to admonish them for violating the norms? And I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that, Mayor?
I guess I hadn't thought about it in that context, so that's a good point. You know, we've had a couple instances, and I can't recall, we had a former council member who had to run up a potential conflict of interest to FPPC around their employment versus something that was in front of council. And I don't remember whether they recused during that process or not. I mean, maybe the solution is to say it should, and if someone doesn't feel it's not as much of as a shall, but may is pretty loosey-goosey.
So in having this discussion, I actually think we should make it shall. If someone is going to go against the advice of council or an FPPC opinion, that could embroil the entire city in litigation. And if it was not meritorious, I think giving the council the opportunity to employ the accountability policy or something else, I think that would be appropriate. We don't have to, but the shall means that we can.
Yes, go ahead.
So we're talking in abstractions about hypothetical situations. And I would prefer to think about known cases that have come up in the past. And Mayor, you mentioned that you didn't think it was real common for commissioners to have to deal with this. You're right, it's not common, but when Councilmember Weinberg and I were on the Parks Commission, we did have a commissioner that had to, in fact, there was a referral of the issue to the FPPC, and the commissioner didn't put it to the FPPC, but others did. Here's the problem. As the vice mayor pointed out, the FPPC can be notoriously slow, and more often than not, they will not even opine. More often than not, what they will tell you is, it depends on this, and this, and we can't really say, and you better talk to an attorney or something like that. They may take a prolonged time to respond and then not give a dispositive response. And so in a situation like that, you know, I'm reticent to limit some future council members' rights to represent their constituents the way they feel they need to represent them.
And to respond to that, I also worry that it creates a perverse incentive, right? Is that, you know, if I know that contacting the FPPC for an opinion means that I'm now disqualified from voting on such matters, it seems to create a perverse incentive for me to go, well, I guess I won't ask them, right? I think that what's appropriate here is the shall disclose. I think the notion that, look, I've asked this question or I got this ruling, I think that the transparency part is good. But the notion that once I put it in, I've sort of somehow disqualified myself from voting on those matters strikes me as a perverse incentive.
Well, you could also argue that what it's doing if we don't require them to disclose is for people to, in fact, I heard you say that it wasn't the commissioner who flagged it. We forced the public to have the concern about.
No, I'm for the disclosure.
Oh, you're for?
For the disclosure, but not the, so shall disclose. That's great. Lots of disclosure. Always in favor of that.
Yeah, I mean, shall share the opinion? Is that where you're, yeah, the shall.
There's two shalls. There's one that they shall
disclose at the next meeting. And then you share the
they request, they shall disclose that the request has been made, and then once they get the opinion, they shall disclose what the opinion was.
Okay, so you're now shall, even though.
On those two things.
Right.
On disclosure, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But the notion that you shall not vote, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay. I just find that puzzling because, you know, if you have an obvious conflict and you just keep voting because you're not going to ask FPPC.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes, go right ahead.
Absent the word shall, what is the recourse if there's a council member who, to use your language, is, you know, voting on something where they have an obvious conflict of interest? We still have recourse, is what I'm saying, right? That word being a shall or a will or a may or a should probably doesn't limit our recourse when somebody is doing something so obvious. It's really those cases where it's not obvious, it's on the bubble, and that's why there's a request to the FPPC. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you have a?
So I'm really moving more towards shall, and part of it is in response, Pete, to what you just said. I think that because there aren't enough shalls and may nots in the commission handbook, I think that that's causing some problems in the very near future. I have not had the experience of the FPPC saying, what the hell do we know? Try it, see what happens. When I had a question about whether I could participate in the ALPR discussion, the city attorney helped me get a report. You can get a 24-hour report, which is going to be very conservative and tell you, no, don't do it. But I did that. I had to sit out a meeting. I had to sit out a second meeting waiting for a full opinion. And then I got that full opinion. The full opinion said, go ahead, God bless, go ahead and vote on it. There was a resolution to it. And I think it was the right process to take. And I think that process is what should be encouraged. It was before my time on council, but as I recall, there was a council member who insisted on voting for something having to do with a park across the street from where she lived. And I think if the shall had been here, it would have given the council an opportunity to say, there's a red line, you took an action which potentially could expose the city to liability. We want to take further action to demonstrate that we don't agree with that.
That's pretty convincing. I mean, this combined with your earlier comment that they're norms, right? Like, even if it says shall, if the vote comes up, at risk of admonishment and so forth, can still vote, right? Like, I mean, you're not. I mean, the thing I'm jealous of is the ever giving up the vote that I promised to cast.
Of course, and the reality is that the prudent member of the council is not going to consider the norms when the issue comes up.
Fair
when
enough.
When I made my request to the FEPC, the norms had nothing to do with it. Going to jail had something to do with it.
I'm glad you didn't go to jail. I can live with shall.
Okay, so we're at the dual shalls on that one. And I know it sounds like just a word, but this was a very important discussion. So thank you for indulging. We're almost done, I think. So you've explained presiding officer, and then there's a correction. So I think that covers these. So
just a housekeeping thing.
yes.
This is like an acrobat thing or something like that. The table of contents leaves out a number of sections. So if you could check that out, thanks.
Okay, so the next step then will be this final in consent, on consent. Okay, so
Public comment?
yes, let's take. Do we have any cards? Okay, no one rushing up. So great, we've given direction, and with that, we've moved through our agenda items. As per usual, we don't talk about informational items, but they make for fascinating reading for those die-hard viewers of the City Council. And we'll move on to council reports and then the staff reports after. So you can do reports and future agenda items at the same time. Who would like to go first? All right, Councilmember Daley.
I have a future agenda item I'd like to request. I'd like to have a study session on expanding EV charging infrastructure in the city of Los Altos. Meaning, where do we put chargers and how can we grow it?
Well, I'm generally supportive of that. I don't know. Staff, is this something that's already in our capital improvement? And, if you've already got plans, maybe first we should be informed of them, or?
Mayor, we intend to include in the capital budget for next year a review of the electrical capacity on this site to add e-vehicle charging, as well as downtown, and solar at Grant Park that could also help sustain EV charging there.
And that would probably be, when would we be having the discussion, May?
I don't think it would come forward as a separate.
No, it'd be in
focused
the
discussion. I
CIP,
think it'd be part of the
CIM.
budget, so it'd be topical. Council could ask questions about it, but we certainly have the capability to do a study session on it or a deeper dive.
Without talking about the issue itself, I think a study session has value because you've got three charging standards, three dominant charging standards. And, the city should have a discussion about which of those charging standards is appropriate. The city should have a discussion about, other things related to charging, like how does it impact our circulation plan and what does it do to, complete streets if you've got a
let me stop.
supercharging place?
Right. So let me stop you there. Is anyone? I'm almost thinking that you and the city manager should have a discussion, and then see how much, and then bring it forward, because I'm not sure. Does anyone want to jump in and support? I mean, I support.
I had that discussion with him today.
Okay.
Would you anticipate discussion of the appropriate way for people to pay for these charging facilities?
Yes, I think that would be an appropriate portion of the discussion. And yes, there are plans in place to expand charging, But those are all tied to that particular project plan, whether or not it's the renovation of the police station or whether it's, solar at Grant Park. So I think we need a more holistic discussion of the charging in our city and all the things that go with it, because it's really important to future.
I won't deliberate, so I'll just say that assuming that the study session would also include the question of the appropriate way to allocate costs to users, I would be supportive.
I'm nervous about it. I will spend an enormous time preparing for it, but I do not feel the least bit qualified to be able to give an educated opinion about what charging standard would be best. And I'm nervous about giving that kind of direction at a study session. Frank, I mean, you know an amazing amount of information about this, and I'm wondering if you're sharing it with staff, wouldn't actually be better than muddying things up with a study session. I'm nervous that I'm going to do the wrong thing, and then we're going to have the wrong standard in the city, and in 5 years no one's going to be able to charge. I'm worried about what public comment is going to say. I don't know where to go.
Yeah, so I'm gonna so let me ask the city manager a question. So you've had a conversation right now. There's two support. I have some concerns too, because I almost wonder, isn't this better suited to an informational update first, so we get some. I feel like I don't understand the baseline, and I don't know that I want to launch into a study session. City manager, what do you recommend here?
Mayor, I think a study session information item or as the budget, it can come forward any way that pleases the council, and we would provide the same information in any form.
If you can provide the same information, then I'd almost rather we get an informational item before the budget, and then we can have a discussion. But I have concerns about the study session too. I don't have enough information to feel that we can launch into a study session. So I would support an informational item first.
Mayor, can I please just very quickly respond to what Councilmember Weinberg said and what you just said? In a study session, we're not the ones that show up with the information. Staff shows up with a report, the public shows up with their comments. Informed stakeholders present information to us, and we have a dialogue about it. I don't know what there is to be afraid of in that environment.
That's not the issue, but all right, you want a study session? I'll support a study session. I think it's, well, I mean, it'll be interesting. We all support the general principle, I'm sure, but anyway. Okay, did you have anything else? All right, other?
This is just an FYI. The city supported me in attending the joint venture Silicon Valley readout on the, I forget what they call it officially, the State of the Valley. It was fascinating. Amazing amount of data, both about the financial and economic realities of what they call Silicon Valley, which is Santa Clara and San Mateo County, with some adjustments to like Scotts Valley or whatever, but like that. And would strongly recommend, it's publicly available, and strongly would recommend reviewing it. For our purposes, I'd say that the economic miracle of Silicon Valley continues, and the main constraint on it is housing. Is that housing is causing everything from jobs going to other cities or other areas to a plunging fertility rate. And it is just a remarkable report to provide context for the many decisions we face. And I'm glad the city was willing to send me.
Councilmember Weinberg?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think everyone on the council probably saw today, I hope staff also saw that Sergio Lopez, who is the chair of the VTA, is requesting time to come speak before the council. He's going to be asking to do that here, as a staff are going to be asking to do that in front of all the cities in Santa Clara County. The topic is going to be, as much as anything else, assuming that a bond measure passes in November, there's going to be funds available to improve those things for which the VTA has jurisdiction. And he'll be interested to know what Los Altos would like to see and how some of those funds could be used for our benefit. I don't know that it would be necessarily worthwhile to have a discussion item on it, but assuming, Mayor, that you're going to entertain his request to speak to the council, it would be worthwhile for all of us to think about what the VTA can provide to our community that is lacking, or we could use improvement. And of course, I would like to invite anyone in the community who has ideas about what the VTA can do to give better service, both congestion management and transportation related to the city of Los Altos. Let us know so that we can let the chair know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. You're still on VTA, or?
I am still on VTA, and it is fascinating.
Oh, okay. We won't get into that. So let me just clarify, because I saw the email and we haven't decided on a response yet. We're not being asked to take a position on the bill. We're being asked to consider that if the tax, it's a tax, right? If the tax is approved, what would we be recommending for Los Altos? Is that correct?
Correct. I specifically asked, are you going to ask the council to endorse something? And he told me, no, that's not what he's doing. It really will be, if the VTA has additional resources, what does Los Altos need from the VTA that we're not giving you yet?
Okay. And for those who may have noticed, speaking of the VTA, we submitted a letter of support for the Homestead Road Safe Routes project. Independent of what you're just talking about, but I'm just going to point it out. Did you have anything else? That's it. So I had the good fortune to have a last-minute invitation that I was able to rearrange my schedule for, to get a tour of 330 Distal, the innards. And it's really cool. And believe it or not, it's going to be done like in July. Yeah, so we should look for ribbon cuttings, events, that kind of thing. And speaking of the chair of the VTA, he was there in that capacity, so he put out an informational video on his social media, and you can see some of the interior shots, but they're beginning to even put some of the kitchen stuff in, and the modular. It was a tour really highlighting the unique or the novel techniques, including the modular construction. Had a lot of engineers and construction types who were asking all sorts of questions that I had no idea what they were talking about. But it's very exciting, and they are projecting July. So that was good news. And I did story time at the library last week, which is always fun. So, when you have the toddlers there, they don't really argue back. So is there anything? Yes, go ahead.
One last thing is it'd be remiss if we didn't recognize the wonderful iftar that was organized since the last meeting. The good fortune to attend, and a number of us did. A lot of work goes into that, and it's a wonderful community building event that they and the food is darn good. Really a great event, and was glad to be invited, glad to participate.
And that reminds me also, there was a Los Alton of the Year event, which you're very well, a number of us were there. And because then Mayor Daley gave the proclamation in January, I didn't have to give a proclamation, but I was able to say a few words. And I suggest if you look, Los Altos Hills basically plagiarized your January proclamation, which I pointed out at the event. So anyway, that too was a wonderful event. And I think with that, staff, do you have any updates? All good? All right. So with that, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.